Samsung is preparing to re-enter the VR space in a partnership with Google. Got a new headset coming out in spring of 2025, and dev kits will go out later this year. I wasn't real sure how I felt about this one, so I called up my friend Show Futuristic, and we had a whole conversation about Samsung, Google, and all the other companies in the space. It's a live open daily podcast. Let's talk about it. Okay, so the new Samsung headset. Supposed to be a dev kit out in October. It was really supposed to come out this year. Then they delayed when the Apple Vision Pro came out, and I guess they made some refactoring, whatever, whatever tech companies do. But dev kits this October is supposed to launch publicly in March. How you feeling about that? Because
is it going to matter? Does it make any difference if another PC headset? I can't keep up with them anymore. Does it matter?
Right.
I don't know. I guess I'm excited. If I was a PC guy, that would be another option.
I think it matters specifically because it's Samsung and it's a name company. This isn't, we're going to talk about them later because I'm going to ask you about HTC, but this isn't like someone who's a name in this space already. This is a major tech company coming back, or I guess back into the space because they built.
No doubt. But so is Pico. But I guess my real question is this the Samsung headset that's supposed to be one of the first to roll out the Meta Horizon OS inside of the headset, or is this another offshoot headset?
So I don't know if you remember, a while back, there was a whole story that Samsung and Google were trying to get Meta to use their new Android operating system. This before we heard the Horizon OS was going to be a thing. Yeah.
I'm thinking of HTC, and you're talking about the Samsung Google headset, which is a big deal.
Right.
The HTC headset is, I don't know about that one. But the Samsung Google headset is a big deal. Okay, my bad. That's my bad. Gotcha.
Yeah, no worries. So, this is the one that's going to use Android XR. It'll have the new chip that's supposed to be the higher end version of what's in the Quest 3 right now. Yada. I have a whole... trying to figure out how to say this correctly. I'm trying really hard to care about this.
About the Samsung Google headset?
Yes, I'm trying hard to get up for this. In part because, one, I don't trust Google. Google's known to bail on stuff that doesn't return a profit right away, especially in this space. The Stadia Paint, the Google Glass, Google Cardboard. Yeah. They're like, this isn't making money right away. We're good. We're just going to bail on this now. Google's known for that. So one of the things, for better for worse, that you can say about Meta is that they're in this for the long haul. They have proven that they will lose billions and billions and billions of dollars before they'll say, okay, we kind of need to change things around, which they're starting to do right now to try to turn a profit. Google's not like that. If Google doesn't make money right away, Google bails. And there's there's several examples of that. So to me, it's okay, you put out a piece of hardware, but if it doesn't sell well, let's say the Pixel would tank, will we be on Pixel 10 or 11 or what we're on right now? Or will they have stopped at the two phones? I don't know. I don't know if I trust Google in this space, if that makes sense.
So let's back up a little bit. Am I excited for the Google Samsung collaboration? Absolutely. I think that's very exciting. Yes, Google has a bad reputation for experimenting with product, experimenting with software, and dipping out before it really has a chance to catch on. I get that, right? But the thing with Google that's exciting is that the Google Glass was just early. It was way too early. So had they stuck with it, they would have just been throwing good money after that, right? So that's fine. I understood why they dipped out of that. And now the industry has caught up to the point where we could afford to see a Google Glass again in some capacity, right? The thing that's very exciting about the Google-Samsung partnership is that Samsung is a proven hardware manufacturer, not just with phones, but in the VR space. And Google has the ecosystem that, frankly, Meta has been begging for. They've been begging for that Google Play Store for the past, they've been very vocal about wishing that it was on a Meta hardware. So what we're seeing is a potential platform that could rival Meta. They have as much money as Meta. They have done it before, so they know what they're getting into, and they know that Apple is in the space, so they kind of have to stick around to be a presence in the space. They also have AI, which is arguably better than Meta's AI. So I think what we're going to see is all the weaknesses that Meta doesn't have. So for example, right now, I use Meta for work. I enjoy working in the multitasking in the Meta workspace, but Meta doesn't have a native word processing app, doesn't have any native productivity apps. So it has to rely on Microsoft and cloud to bring that into their ecosystem. And frankly, it's lacking for it.
And those were just the web apps too. They weren't even like the actual,
Google has everything Apple has. But it will be native on their headset. So this is actually a really exciting development.
I can feel that. I'm so apprehensive just because Google just doesn't have a good track record with me of sticking to products other than their phones.
You got Gmail?
Let me rephrase that. Google does not have a good track record sticking with their hardware. Let me rephrase that. Their software they're fine. Like I use Google Docs and Sheets and all that stuff all the time. I use Google Drive for work. Obviously, I have a YouTube channel, so I'm not talking about like the software and like the media end of thing. I'm talking specifically about their hardware. Now, Samsung's handling the hardware part specifically. Google's like, hey, well, here's all of our software. We're not getting to the hardware spot. Did I feel a little bit better about it? But the Google is hands-on with the hardware end of it. Then I'm like, no, thank you.
I mean, Chromecast, the Chromebooks are still going strong. If you want to buy a Google, what do you call it? Those Google boxes that are like the Apple TVs,
right?
Those are still fine. Google has a pretty strong presence. They just failed me on Stadia, and that's because the cloud infrastructure didn't make financial sense for them yet. But other than that, they're fine.
Right. How you feeling about the HTC thing? I don't know if you saw that announcement that now there's going to be a new Vive Focus coming out. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of specs that I can announce. It'll use the same chip as the one we just talked about.
Sure.
I don't know if I don't think this is meant to replace their current one, XR Elite, what's on the headset. Excuse me. I don't think this is going to replace the XR Elite, what's on the market right now. This looks more like, I guess, enterprise focused. Yeah. I don't know. HTC just feels like they've been kind of rudderless for a while. I've seen a lot of people coming in and out of there, like names that I know who've worked for the company that moved away now. I don't know. What are your thoughts on their one? Because I looked at this and I said, meh.
I don't understand. The standalone headsets that aren't part of its own ecosystem don't apply to me. I'm an Apple guy, I can't afford the Apple Vision Pro, so I rock with Meta, which gives me enough of what I'm looking for. Everything outside of that, I don't understand who it's for. There's like 1,000 different options for PC users to do the same thing, which is either to hook it up directly to their PC or, I guess, stream to their PC. And if I'm going to do that, I'm either going to get a Meta Quest or I'm just going to get a big screen beyond. Other than that, or whatever the visor headset might be. I don't know what that's going to be. Other than that, I don't know what the other headsets are doing in the space. But, I'm not a PC person, so I might not be the market.
Yeah, I think if you look at something like the Somnium VR1, my friend Croy is about to get one of those here pretty soon. Like the Somnium VR1, I clearly identified the market they're going for. So the big screen beyond, for that matter. We're going after the high-end PC VR users, people who are looking for an index replacement for whatever reason. So you already have Knuckles, you already have base stations, all that. They have clearly identified who their niche is. VR1 specifically, when they were doing their demos at Somnium Connect, I saw a whole bunch of reports about that over in Prague. There were a bunch of people who were doing like sims. So they were in like flights, like full-on flight sim rigs or full-on driving sim rigs and doing stuff like that. So they've identified their market. Big Screen Beyond basically said the same thing. This is just a very, very tiny PCVR headset. We made it because we don't think headsets are comfortable enough or light enough to wear for hours on end. They specifically told you who they're marketing to.
Yeah.
When I look at this HTC thing, and I think this has been HTC's problem really for the jump, they just said, hey, we put out a headset. They've never clearly defined their market. And I think to an extent, Meta's getting better at that too, at defining, we want a headset for this and this and this. You can use it for this and this. Zuckerberg's going around saying, when I saw the Apple Vision Pro, everyone was sitting down. We want people to be more active. I never see that kind of focus from HTC. I've never seen that focus from them. And that's what kind of bugs me about that company.
Maybe it's enterprise. It is standalone. Right. Maybe it's enterprise, which isn't for us at all. But maybe they have a space, because I know that's where they were most successful before, was enterprise. That's probably where they'll land again. It'll be a very high price, specialized, customizable headset for B2B. Could be that.
Yeah. So like when you look at the XR Elite, that seemed like a headset that wanted to straddle both lines. They were like, oh, you can use your Viveport thing, and then it's native PCVR integration, but it's also got a standalone store. The standalone store is trash. Anyone who's ever looked at it knows that there's almost nothing on that headset. You never see developers developing for it now. I just don't feel like they ever really picked a lane and said, this is who we are. This is what defines us. It just seems like they're putting out tech over and over and over again. To a certain extent, I think that's Pico's problem too. Whereas going back to what we were saying about Samsung, I think Samsung is for the high-end user that isn't in Apple's ecosystem. Samsung can easily carve out that lane because there's, 3 to 4 times as many Android users as Apple users in the world, something like that, or Windows to Apples. So they at least have a clearly defined market. HTC just boggles my mind. Like, who you aiming for? What are you going for?
Yeah, like I'm excited about the Samsung headset. I'm a little excited about that.
I'm interested. I'm holding on excitement. I'm pressing pause on excitement. I'm not quite there yet. I want to hear more about it, but You make a good point about having all Google's infrastructure and their ecosystem, being able to build that directly into your headset is going to be a huge boon for them.
I had a Gear VR, and I remember years ago when I had my Gear, I went to some kind of event. It might have been an E3, and in one of the back rooms, there was the early Samsung. What was the Samsung headset called? Not Samsung. I'm sorry, Google headset called back in the day. That was competing with Gear. Do you remember that one?
The cardboard, not cardboard.
No, not cardboard. It had the soft material cover. It was a really great headset. That's where I first played some early VR games there. And I always thought that this was going to take off, but they dropped out.
Daydream
was an awesome little headset. And I think they're going to take a lot of the knowledge that they learned sitting back and watching, a lot of knowledge they learned from that's another thing. I think we're going to see some cloud stuff from Google in the VR space that Meta just hasn't been able to do yet. Right. Yeah. So I think Google potentially has all the areas covered from productivity. They've definitely got the flat gaming that can be integrated into VR. We saw with Witchblood what that could look like. They've got the streaming opportunities, and they've got the hardware expertise. So yeah, I'm really excited to see their competition, not just for Google, but against Apple.
Do you think they touch VR gaming at all? Like full immersive 3D gaming or VR gaming?
They can. I think they can. Don't they? Do they own a studio? I can't remember if they do or not.
Google owns Alchemy Labs, so that's Job Simulator, Vacation Simulator, and Cosmonia's High.
That's what I was thinking of. Valve. They absolutely own a studio, so I think they're going to touch games. I think developers that are comfortable with the Meta platform will happily go over to work with Google also because they have a potentially large base. So yeah, I think this could be very disruptive.
I could see them leaning more into the productivity end of it too, just because now I'm thinking about dev kit time. They said dev kits are going to go out in October. I've talked about this, so I'm blue in the face. You cannot build an app, a good one. I'm sorry, you cannot build a VR game, a good one, in the matter of space of a few months. So when that first launches, their claim to fame is going to be, here's Google Docs, here's Google Drive, here's all these like Google integrations that we already have. They're natively in the headset. You got your full Play Store, and you got your full suite of things to do whatever, video editing, all the stuff that you're talking about doing in Quest right now that we don't really have the software to support that. So you're putting band-aids or broken legs to do that. I think if they lean into that and say, we are the productivity headset, here's all the stuff that works right out of the gate, that's something that Apple and Meta can't claim out of the gate. They're getting there in a lot of spots, but they're still not quite there yet. So I think that's going to be the claim to fame. I can't see this for VR gaming, specifically because I know to build natively for that, and we ran into this with Apple Vision Pro, the development platform is going to take developers some time to kind of wrap their heads around. It's not going to be like, oh, it's just Android, port over. No, with VR, it's going to be different. So I think VR gaming is going to be something that comes to them late, but they're going to have the productivity angle covered right out of the gate, which I think will be a good boon for them.
So when you say VR gaming, you're talking about traditional first-person perspective gaming, not like a Moss or Witchblood.
Correct.
Okay. So if that's the case, which I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm saying they've got Alchemy for a reason, and they're one of the leaders in innovation in VR, right? So I think that's being considered with the launch and how it rolls out and how they attack the market. So I'm not going to dismiss it and say they're just going to be a productivity machine. I think they're going to have that down, but I think there's going to be surprises. I bet you they come out with a controller. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that I think that'd be smart. Although the director of Alchemy has said straight up, if you don't have a plan for hand tracking, you've kind of screwed yourself in the future. Like they're big believers in hand tracking. In the last year, all three of their games, Job Simulator, Vacation Simulator, Cosmonia's High, all got hand tracking integrations into their games. In part because it wouldn't surprise me if they knew this was actually coming and someone from higher on up said, hey, put hand tracking in because we're going to have hand tracking be a thing. So I think first party wise, and you see this with every console generation, all the first party stuff comes out right away with any new tech. With Sony, with Microsoft, with Xbox, all the first party titles, because they get their dev kits way earlier than like third party vendors do. I'm saying from like a third party perspective, you're going to get Job Simulator probably on that thing day one, natively working with probably really good, strong hand tracking because they're going to get those headsets very quickly and configure it to that. I'm saying, are you going to see the shell games and the resolutions and thems of the world get into that quickly, or is that going to be? I don't see that happening at launch, I guess is what I'm getting at. I see that happening a couple of months out when they have more time with those kits. Because we've seen from Quest 3, from PSVR 2, devs need time to convert their games and get these builds out. Otherwise, they launch messes like a lot of PSVR 2 games that launch without dynamic foveated rendering. And then we'll say, oh, this looks like trash. So
So do you think, and I know we're not going to stay on this too much longer, but do you believe that Google, if they came out with a headset and Samsung at a competitive price point, something that's way more attractive than the Vision Pro, but something a bit more expensive and frankly more powerful than the Quest 3, they have a clear productivity path. They do something interesting with the Stadia technology that they shelved. They have the whole Google Play Store that allows you to play games like a Witchblood style, and I'm using Witchblood because that's a very simple 2D game that's converted into 3D. They have all of those games available that you can play in the 2D space, similar to Apple Vision Pro, and they have a few decent launch rollout games for some decent first-party developers. You know, a Moss, and some of the bigger titles that you expect, and something from Alchemy Labs. The real question is, how disruptive do you think? Is that enough to be really disruptive?
Yes, because I think AVP's biggest problem was price. That is their biggest issue. Your average American, well, soon to be other markets, but right now your average American doesn't have $3,500 to throw away on the headset. The people who were flying over from Europe to get their headsets, those are all creators and enthusiasts. And the people who wanted the latest in tech heads, people who wanted the latest and greatest tech. That's not a general consumer priced product. If you get it to something that where consumers can actually see, okay, I can spend this much, it's the same amount I spend on my phone, for instance, then I can see that happening. Whereas that price point, they're gonna have to play with that. Like that involves a lot of market research and people way smarter than the two of us to figure that stuff out. But yes, I absolutely think they could do that.
If they came out with $1,000 to $1,500 headset, I think Meta has a problem.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
Yeah, I think Meta's got the bottom end of the race won. Like the value driven stuff, that's done. Pico was supposed to be their competitor. That's not going to happen. We're seeing what's happening with PSVR 2 now. Now they're going to PC compatibility, but the software support's not going to be there on PC. Meta's got that race won. I think that's a lock. That's done. I think the mid range, like you just talked about, the $1,000 to $1,500 one, that's wide open right now because HTC's not winning that, Varro's not winning that, Somnium's not winning that. So in that mid range with the productivity part, yeah, Samsung could be a real headache for sure.
But the thing that people don't take into consideration, although Meta does have the low range, Google, I feel like Meta is always fighting a constant PR war as well. Like no matter how good the headset is, people have to get over their initial misunderstanding of VR or apprehension toward VR, and then their dislike of Meta, and then their dislike of Mark Zuckerberg. Google has none of that to worry about.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting watching that play out.
Yeah. And I'd be curious if they released, like Apple's going to release a lower price SKU, which means it'll probably be about the price of the Google headset. I'm curious if Samsung and Google say, okay, we got our $1,500 one. Let's release ones for $700 and strip some of the cool stuff out of it and see how that does too. Because this multiple SKU line, we're seeing Meta do this, Pico's about to do this, HTC's done this for years, Somnium's about to do this, Pimax is doing this with the Crystal. I'm curious if Samsung and Google go that way as well and say, we're gonna have two different product lines. You want all the bells and whistles? Here's the $1,500 model. You want just to get your basic productivity stuff done, be able to play some games? Here's the $700 model. I'm curious if they go that route.
You know, I don't know if you intended to talk about the Quest 3S in this episode, that would be an interesting conversation because I know you did a video about it. I'm not sure who the market for that is for. I get what the intention is, right? To boost the hardware at a low price, but like you said with these other premier headsets that are coming out, I'm not sure who the market for the 3S is for. Because, again, my wife, who has a Quest 2, is perfectly happy with her Quest 2. I don't care about, the plan that they just came out with, where you can get it for a monthly installment, she's not even interested. And I'm thinking if the majority of the Quest 2 owners are like that, I'm not sure what they can do to convince people to get a Quest 3S.
In Quest 2 support, which is why I think they're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off at some point. I think sometime in 2025, they start putting out messaging saying, okay, the Quest 3S is on the market. Quest 2 is going to start losing. Like, they're going to freeze the OS updates like they did with Quest 1. Quest 1 stopped OS updates after version 51, I think. We're on version 67 now. So they're going to freeze OS updates at some point in the next year. And they say, okay, no more OS updates. They're going to put out messaging, then you're going to start seeing developers saying we're going to end Quest 2 support after such and such date, for instance. So let's say, for instance, Beat Game comes out and says, hey, August 2025, Beat Saber will no longer be supported on Quest 2. If you start removing the ability, if you basically force them into the upgrade path, you see this with like phones all the time, where Apple iPhone 8, 9, 10, and 11 are no longer supported and no longer getting OS updates. You kind of force them into that lane, and then they look at what their options are. I think once the 3S hits the market, give it a year, we start seeing that from Quest 2. And once that winds down, then people like your wife have to make a choice. Basically have a headset that is frozen in place, frozen in time, still works. Just like people play their old Sega Genesis every now and then, but you're not going to be able to play the latest and greatest moving forward.
I think what I'm seeing is a software problem. This is the problem that Apple has. This is the problem that Google might run into, Samsung might run into. This is definitely the problem that Meta has. I think the problem is these companies haven't figured out if they want to go for gamers, if they want to go for productivity, or they want to go for fitness. Meta stumbled into the casual glasses market, and it's a hit. I love Ray-Bans. Yeah. I love these things. These are great.
Yeah.
Right?
Total happy accident.
Completely, right? I use these things every day. They are better than my AirPods to listen to anything in my ear. They serve a function. With the Quest, I am motivated. I've said this on previous podcasts. I love VR. I want to use the Quest. I find a way to make it work in my space. So I'm going to stay up with the updates. But when you have casuals who use it for fitness every once in a while, they don't care about the upgrades. So forcing them out, unless the hardware changes, or unless the software changes and there's some need for them, forcing them out through updates, all they're going to do is just put VR down and just say forget it. Right. So I think the bigger problem is trying to figure out use case and software. So that's why I said I don't know where the 3S fits, because those people that bought it for fitness, they don't really care if there's a processor upgrade.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. And I mean, you make a good point. I don't think they expected every single person that got a Quest 2 to upgrade to Quest 3S. I know it'd be foolish for them to expect that. But if they get 40% of the market, that's still that's still pretty good business. That's still, let's just say there's 16 million Quest 2s in the market right now that haven't upgraded Quest 3, because we now know the Quest 3 is not sold in the tens of millions of numbers yet. So let's just say 40% of those people now get a Quest 3S. Just do the math on that. That's 6.5-ish units sold. They'll be happy with that. That's still arguably probably the second best-selling headset ever made. Honestly.
It's still a challenge because I know at least 10 Quest 2 owners that don't turn on their Quest 2, haven't turned it on in a year. Even amongst people that you and I know haven't touched their Quest in months. You know, unless you're motivated, unless you're following this industry and you really want to know about gaming, or you use it on a daily basis, which most people don't. Yeah, you're not turning on the Quest. So I think that number, that turnover percentage of people who are going to upwardly adopt, I don't know, pretty small. Well, I think that's why they may be pivoting.
This opens up an interesting topic, though. Is we know the Quest 2 was like lightning in the bottle. Well, anyone understands that Quest 2 was absolutely boosted by the pandemic. Where's the number where they're feeling comfortable with their hardware sales? This isn't just Meta. This is any company. Are you comfortable with 2 million units sold, 3 million units sold, something like that? Because that's really where the number's really going to land. If PSVR 1 was considered a massive hit at 5 million units sold, and even though the market's different now, the Quest 2 didn't redefine the market. To me, we're now seeing this with every other headset that came out since then. That's been lightning in the bottle. So if the Quest 3 sells, maxes out to like 5 or 6 million units, that doesn't mean it's a failure necessarily.
Sure it does. If our barometer is the PSVR 1, which is 5 million, which is pretty much just for gamers, that's absolutely a failure. Meta didn't invest billions and billions of dollars to just attach the gamer market. The 20 million, which was, people have to remember, the 20 million was initially 10 million. Their magic point was 10 million, and they would jump for joy. Now it's 20 million, 25 million users,
something like that. And
it's 25 million, and they're thinking, okay, now we're just getting started. Now we're just cooking. I don't think that if they're just looking for gamers, 5 million is not enough. 10 million is not enough. They need that blue ocean. They need the market of people that want productivity. They need the market of health people. They need people who consistently want to use these headsets to replace the phone, because that's what That's what Zuckerberg initially wanted. They wanted to knock out the phone market. So
let me ask this question. Do you ever at any point see yourself having something replace your phone at this point? Or is your phone so ubiquitous in your life that if, like, let's say they made the Ray-Bans got to a point where they could replace your phone, where you could just comfortably like navigate everything and hand tracking and all that, do you see a point in, let's just say in our lifetime, that you can see yourself never touching a cell phone again? If you have to do anything that you would do on the cell phone right now, you would just put on a pair of glasses or a headset. Because I have a really hard time seeing that future.
Tim Cook, in an interview with MKBHD, said something a few weeks back that really made me think about how Apple approaches this problem. Mm-hmm. Their job, they're not motivated by engagement with your phone. They're motivated by, is the phone a tool to help you do what you're trying to do in real world, right? Mm-hmm. Is this tool helpful? And they want to make it as helpful as possible for you to do that. So they don't care how long you spend on the phone. They want it to be invaluable for you in the world, right?
Right.
I think the question shouldn't be, are we going to replace our phone? Our phones slide in our pocket, and it is a tool that we use for multiple things. The question should be, how are we going to use our headset, right? What value does that have? How is that going to be valuable in our day-to-day lives? The thing about these Ray-Bans is, I don't care if they add, screens in it. That'll be nice. It'll be cool, but it's never going to replace my laptop, and it's never going to do what VR does. It's just going to give me heads-up displays. What's cool about these is that I can use these in my ear and not disengage from the real world. The sound is fantastic. I can have a phone call with you. So these are supplemental to my real world. They don't replace anything other than headphones. That's the question that VR and AR and XR needs to answer. Not is it going to replace the phone? You can't replace the phone. The phone slides into your pocket. You can drive and not have to worry about putting something else in your ear or your face to affect your driving. So that's the real problem.
Okay, so do you see a future where you never touch a laptop again?
It could happen. Technically, a lot of people are using their iPads right now without touching a laptop. In fact,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
The only reason Apple is not fully going into iPad is because they still need that laptop money. There's 1,000 reasons financially why they need an ecosystem with both iPad and laptop. But frankly, I could technically, if Apple would allow it, do everything on my iPad and be totally fine. So to answer that question, yeah. There was a time, 10 years ago, when people thought you would never get rid of your desktop. Yeah. And here we are. So yeah.
I know more people with tablets and laptops than I do desktops at this point in my life. I have one because I need one for work. But before I got the job I currently have now, I was a laptop guy. I had a MacBook and I was perfectly happy. I do everything I needed from it. I only got the desktop when I needed it for high-end PCVR, for all the content stuff that I do, and for video production work and things for my job. So okay.
I do all my video production on the MacBook Air, which is the lowest end laptop you can possibly get from Apple. And this is more powerful than my mid-level laptop from 10 years ago that I was using when I was a pro video editor. So technology moves quickly. The goal is to make things more efficient and comfortable for the average user.
That's it for this episode. Show will hopefully be a regular fixture on the podcast moving forward. You catch Live Open daily on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and iHeart. Also catch me on Twitch. I stream VR there several days a week, twitch.tv/liveopenmic. Thanks, and I'll talk to you on the next one.